Welcome to Art for All Ages Online. Today we have a wonderful and super simple painting for you. It is painting number 11. It is the New York skyline in the fall. And that is because it is all done in the fall colors. And we're going to show you how to do it very simply, as always, one simple step at a time. And oh, by the way, did I forget to mention? The whole thing can be done with nothing more than our good old friend the sponge. It is super simple. Let's take a look and see what we're talking about. This is the painting for the day today. You will need, in order to accomplish today's painting, stencil number 14. If you do not yet have stencil number 14 in your kit, please go back to our website, to the supply page, and order any of the other additional items you need to create today's painting. Let's go ahead and carry on and get started. So as I said, we will need stencil 14, but we don't need it right away. It comes towards the end of the painting. The sponge will be used to create 99 to 100% of today's painting. We will use the brush simply to mix up the colors. We'll start, as almost always, with a bright yellow in our palette. So find the brightest yellow in your palette and mix up a nice, large batch of that yellow. We'll even go ahead and paint some of that color onto the tip of the sponge to save the paint. We'll put the sponge into the paint that we've mixed, and we're going to start here at the bottom of the page, and we're simply going to pull all the way across the page. It doesn't matter if you start on the left, if you start on the right. It does matter that you start on the tape and pull all the way across. In fact, what we're going to be doing today is we're pretty much going to make the whole painting yellow. So we'll go ahead and carry that all the way up to the top, just like that. Nice and easy. If you feel like you want it a little darker, we'll go ahead and mix up some more yellow and repeat the process. If you do this, you want to keep the paper somewhat dry. You don't want it too wet. That'll make it a little bit darker of a color, and now we're starting to look the way we want there. That's nice. Same thing though, wet the tip, squeeze it out, and soften it up so it fades. We want it lighter at the top. We'll go ahead and clean out our sponge and move on to the next part of today's painting. Pretty easy stuff. What we just did, we're going to do the same thing all over again. We're just going to change two simple things, the color and the location. Let me show you what we're talking about. What we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and we're going to mix up some of the alizarin crimson, the cherry red color in your palette. We'll go ahead and take that alizarin crimson and mix it up over here. Clean out our brush. And this time we're going to be here at the top of the painting. Same thing, the color goes onto the tip of the sponge and you pull all the way across the painting. Nice and even. Wet the tip, squeeze it out, and then let's come back and soften that up so it fades into there. There we go. Yeah, that's looking good. What we're going to do now is we're going to give ourselves a little bit stronger of that color. We're going to add some of the Payne's gray, maybe even a little of the purple. Oh, well, look at that. I made a little mistake. I'll wet the tip, squeeze it out, and I'll just soften that up. Now it's gone. Isn't that nice? Super easy. Now, with this new color, we'll go ahead and add it onto the sponge. We want it here at the top of the painting, so we're going to just add some of that darkness into the top. We can even add some wispy little hints of some clouds here, and we'll make that wavy. Wet the tip, squeeze it out, and then soften that up so that those clouds are softly wisping across the sky there. That looks good. We can soften this up here too if we want. Go ahead and clean out our sponge and move on to the next part of the painting. What we're going to do now is we're going to utilize the stencil in a variety of different ways by repositioning it over and over again to create some depth and some different shadows for the different buildings in our painting. We'll show you what we're talking about. Most people will look at the stencil and think, this is the way I want to make sure that I put my buildings in. The reality is that would actually paint the sky. We need to turn the stencil upside down so that we can then paint the buildings rather than painting the sky. It is most important that you've made sure that your painting is completely dry before you go into this next step. It's also important that you know that while we utilize this, we're going to be utilizing it in various ways. We're going to bring it here, then we're going to flop it, and then we're going to bring it lower, and then we're going to turn it again and bring it lower. We may even move it from side to side to create various buildings in our program. This time here, I want to make sure that I get this so that I don't eliminate this lovely sky that I've created. In order to do that, I could go low, but I would like to have some depth here, so I'd like to have one of the buildings that goes over and crosses over that area without losing the rest of the other. So we'll go ahead and position this in this way here. At this point, we're going to now begin to utilize the stencil, which will make this painting very simple from this point on. The catch is three things. Gotta have three. And the catch is three things. Number one, you have to make sure that your painting is completely dry before you move on to this process. Number two, when you use the stencil, you have to make sure that you squeeze your sponge tight, that it is nice and dry for this particular part of the painting. You don't want it too wet because it will bleed underneath the stencil. And the third thing is you have to hold that stencil down in place because you don't want it to slip and slide so that you lose your position. We'll show you what this is all about as we go through this next part of the painting. Now, we're going to go ahead and use our brush, not to paint, but to mix up the color. And the color we want to start with is actually the burnt sienna. It's the brown color in your palette. And we're going to mix it here right along with whatever red we may have had left over. If you don't have any red, if you want to add a little red, that's okay. You can add some alizarin crimson to that. The key here is you don't want to make this color too dark. But you do need a lot of it, so don't be shy. We'll add a little bit more red into that. There we go. And a little more water to make it flow. Now, as always, when using our stencils, make sure that your sponge is squeezed tight and it is mostly dry. You will also have to make sure that you hold the stencil down so that it does not move. Been utilizing the sponge mostly in a horizontal motion, which is fine. Not now. What we want to do now is we want to put the sponge here and pull down. Here and pull down. The catch with this is as you pull down with the sponge, you want to be able to pull softly away from the painting. That pulling softly away from the painting will give you that lift motion, which will taper off at the bottom. We'll show you what that's all about too. The other thing that we want to do is we want to be able to pull the sponge with the lifting motion so that what we're going to get is that soft pull away. There we go. See how this is wisping at the bottom here? So that you really have it mostly at the top. That's what we're looking for. And we'll go all the way across the stencil. We can make it go to the bottom if we want. I make sure that we get that semi-filled in, but the key is we want it super soft. We don't want it really dark. We're going to get dark eventually, but not right away. A little bit more right there. Okay, let's lift the stencil and take a quick look. Ah, that's looking good. That's what we're looking for. We'll go ahead and remove the stencil. We'll take the back end of the sponge and clean the stencil off. And very, very important, some kind of a rag to clean and dry off the stencil. That's important. Now what we just did, we're going to do again but we're going to move the stencil in a variety of different ways to create different building shapes. We'll show you what we're talking about. Again, it's very important that your painting is completely dry before you do this next step. We can see that we line the stencil up with where we used to have it the first time, but we don't want to do it the same way. We want to do it different. So we're going to take the stencil and we're going to flop it and turn it around. And this time, again, being very careful about where we position the stencil, we're going to go ahead and clip it into the painting here. We want to make sure that where we're putting the stencil is going to line up in a good way with the rest of the painting, that we don't want to have certain lines that are crossing each other in a bad way. There. Now, once we've lined the stencil up the way we want, we're going to go ahead and use our brush to mix up the next color, which is the same color, just a little darker. You can start it here if you want, but if you have some of that other dark color here, like the purple, you can mix that into there. You don't want it super, super dark, but you do want it darker than your first one. If you've mixed it up and it's too dark, you can always add a little water or clean out your palette and try to mix the color up again somewhere else. Again, make sure the sponge is dry. We'll put the sponge into that new color. Again, holding the stencil down, starting at the top of the stencil and pulling down. This is a good color. This works well. I like this. Get some more of that and fill that in. It's only supposed to be slightly darker than the first time. Let's take a look. Very carefully, lift the stencil. Excellent. You can see the different layer of buildings. We'll go ahead and remove the stencil. Again, clean off your stencil in between each of these processes. Again, dry off your stencil in between each of these processes so that the stencil's not wet when you lay it on the painting again. Again, making sure that your painting is completely dry before you do this next step, coming back to the stencil. Again, we can see that we used it this way the first time and that we flopped it this way for the second time. But now what I want to do is I want to go back to the first way that we used it, but I don't want to just repeat the same thing again. What I want to do is I want to shift it over in one way or another and lower onto the painting so that we create some different shapes. You may find that some of the stencil goes off the page, that's fine. You may find that you're going to shift it over here to do something different over here, where you'll have to do some finagling over here. And again, lower into the page. Oh yeah, that looks good. You may also need a piece of tape to hold this down. So I'm going to go ahead and just put a piece of tape right here to hold that in place. Again, be careful with this line here. You don't want to paint in that area. We'll talk about that in a minute. The color we want this time is dark. So whereas we started with the burnt sienna color like last time, and we'll use that as our base, we want to add the Payne's gray in to make it really dark. In fact, that Payne's gray and some purple also works really well. We want this really dark. Same thing, a dry sponge into the dark color. Hold the stencil down and pull down to make the darker buildings. We don't need these buildings, they're only on the tape. Here's where we want to be careful where the stencil comes off the edge there. So let's go ahead and we'll do this very carefully here. And we'll just pull it straight down to the edge there like that. If you want to keep going, you can keep going and then leave it off at the edge right there. You can do that too. Here you go. We want this to be on the dark side. A soft touch works best. If you're pushing too hard, you'll lift the paint rather than adding the paint. Same thing, let's carefully lift the stencil and see what we have. And voila, we have buildings. I want a dark building right here in the middle. So what I'm going to do is, I see how this lines up. I'm going to move that part of the building here. I'm not going to paint these other buildings, but I want this one here in the middle, nice and dark. So I'm going to use just that one there. How you do this is your prerogative. Your painting will look different based upon where you put the stencil. Let's take a look there. Excellent. And again, we'll take the back end of the sponge and clean off the stencil and return it to our kit so that we can use it again for another painting in our program. This is stencil number 14, which can be used for many paintings in our program. There's one last thing that I want to add for our painting today, and it is birds. It will require the small brush. This is an optional part of the painting. You do not have to put the birds in, but if you want, they have to be put in with the brush. And we'll go ahead and very carefully add in just a couple of wistful birds here and there. And in the distance here. Maybe another one right over here. And now we'll take the tape off and see what we've done. And now with the tape removed, we have the beautiful white border wrapped around the painting. We see the variation of the buildings in the 3 different colors. We have a few little birds and a beautiful fall sky. This is painting number 11, the New York Skyline in the fall. We hope you enjoy it. Thank you for coming to our art class today. We hope that you've enjoyed it. We hope that your painting came out as well as ours, and that you check out the rest of our library for other paintings, both with and without stencils, but always with the sponge. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.